What is going on, everyone? We have a lot to get into. We have a handful of pitchers, some hitters, early playing time trends, and more to dive into in this part two of these early trends that we're watching. Season's, about a week and a half, 2 weeks into the year. There's a lot going on, so let's get right to it instead of wasting time. We'll start with great podcasting. Here we go. We're gonna start with my notes are right here. Sorry, I'm scrambling. I have the wrong notes up. I apologize. So we're going to start with this lineup here. The Mets, as you can see, I highlighted Alvarez because, well, Alvarez isn't playing. Yeah, he was called up and has started 1 of 4. People had high hopes for him. They should. He's a top prospect. But hearing what Buck Showalter had to say about him, it felt very old school manager-ish. Like he just wasn't very optimistic in terms of like instant gratification. We're not going to see a lot of them. It sounds like early on. Francisco Alvarez, talent is there, big time power. Obviously, some swing and miss. We saw that in the minors and in a small cup of coffee last year. But a lot of upside, but the playing time's not there. And we need him to gain catcher eligibility in some places. So if he doesn't have catcher eligibility, it's a long-term stash. He's going to be up for upwards of 2+ months. So the playing time could easily turn into his favor. But as we sit here today, there really isn't much to it in terms. There really isn't much for him in terms of playing time. So Francisco Alvarez, you got to hold on to. You have to kind of bring those expectations down for an overall playing time. If he hits, great. But if he's not playing enough catcher, if he's playing 2 to 3 games a week, we're looking at 2 to 3 weeks. We're looking at about 3 weeks before he gets eligibility for leagues like NFBC and all that. So keep that in mind. It is a stash, a huge upside play, especially at a position that many people need. But just I would treat him as a stash for now. The next situation we're going to discuss is the Franchy Cordero thing. Like, is this really happening? Is it Franchy Cordero season? He has started, 5 of the last 7, but if you filter out lefties, boom, 5 straight righties, and they have, I think, another 6 more righties the rest of this week. Is a popular streamer in deeper leagues, not a guy I'd go out of my way to get. We see him come into the year. Franchy Cordero came into the year with a very strong spring. We saw Franchy run hot with the Red Sox last year. We know what he can do when he's running hot. He gets the short porch in New York. He has a strong side platoon right now. He's a fun one, DFS, deeper league play. But as quick as he gets hot, he can get cold, and next thing you know, he's being dropped. So I wouldn't go crazy on him. It's just a fun, intriguing upside play for power, especially given his skill set in that ballpark. Another guy, huge upside. People seem to really like this year. I keep calling him Amir Garrett, but in my head it's Garrett. It's Garrett Stone or Stone Garrett. Excuse me. Geez, I even wrote it down wrong. Stone Garrett of the Washington Nationals. Talk about toolsy player. He is that. But what I'm afraid of here is the potential for him to simply be in a weak side platoon / 4th outfield role. He has played 2 of 3, but like yesterday versus a lefty, mind you, he didn't start, and that is usually the side of the platoon he gets. It could simply be a day off after playing 2 straight, but he's DHing. He's not like he's playing the field. Alex Call is the guy getting the playing time right now. As you can see, Call not only getting the playing time, but leading off no matter the matchup, lefties or righties. Against lefties, he usually bets they've played a lot. So even against lefties, he's been leading off, which is weird because normally it's Thomas, but Thomas batted 5th there, 2nd here. So he's been moved. I think Alex Call he's running with the leadoff spot right now. He's leading off against righties as well. Alex Call has a lot more appeal here. Stone Garrett is the upside play for sure because of the tools, but there's a chance because Alex Call was also in this type of role in terms of being a 4th outfield type, a DH type. It took injuries for him to take advantage of that. And it might be that same situation for Stone Garrett. Let's talk about Connor Capel, a guy that I've talked about a couple times on the show here. Connor Capel, we're looking at his last year's numbers. Before entering the year, he's just 25 years old. He's between 3 stops. He had 13 homers, 22 stolen bases. This year, we've seen him steal a couple bases. So the new rules paired with that being a skill set, there is stolen base upside here. Seth Brown is on the IL. The reason why Connor Capel is even being mentioned is because now Connor Capel can enter a strong side platoon. I think they face 6 of 7 righties this week. So I plugged them into a 50, but this is a 15 team, my main event league. So very deep league guy. But he showed good plate skills and on base ability last year across various levels, never less than 111 WRC plus. 100 is league average for mind you. So he's 11% better than league average at every stop. And he doesn't chase, makes a good amount of contact. It's almost like a solid high floor type of skill set. Reminds me of like a Bryce Terang type where there's a little bit of pop, but more so speed and batting average upside here. So we'll see what happens. But again, he has a couple stolen bases, and they came off of a pinch running spot. So we know he will run when he gets on base. He went 1 for 4 yesterday, I think, with a double. So again, it's more of it's a very deep league play, and he's probably going to platoon. But there is a path to floor, a path to some type of short-term relevance, or it could be long-term. It depends on how long that oblique is for Seth Brown, because obliques linger. Hitters will be out longer than expected. Like Haniger had a grade 1, and he's been out for like over a month already. Just to give you an idea of what type of run we can get here. So don't sleep on Connor Capel. The next thing we're going to talk about here is McCormick. Chas McCormick's leading off for the Houston Astros. And the cool thing about Chas McCormick leading off is that it was a decision made by Dusty, and it sounds like Jeremy Pena was on board. And Chas McCormick has now started 3 straight as the leadoff guy. This is after having, again, they've been playing with the Astros always play with playing time. That's why you have Jolks back-to-back games. Myers playing. Dubon's hitting over 300, so Mauricio Dubon's playing right now over Hensley. But it's one of these things that there's a lot of fluidity back here. What's not fluid anymore is McCormick's playing time. He's played 5 straight, let off 3 straight. We're talking 2 home runs, 3 stolen bases for McCormick, 877 OPS and a 361 OBP at this time. So again, early, but he's getting on base, which matters when you're leading off. He's running and he's hitting for power, which we know he can do both. And one of the only things you should watch out for is that 28% strikeout rate. He has had strikeout rates similar in the past, but he also has a double-digit walk rate, which is why the on-base skills are playing. So the strikeout rate, although concerning, we're talking about a guy that you're getting off waivers anyway, a guy that will lead off for this team for the foreseeable future until Altuve returns or until he underperforms. Right now, McCormick's performing, hitting well. You should ride the wave at the very least, and there's power and speed there. Another team that has a new leadoff hitter, I guess, is the Tigers, Akil Baddoo. I thought Matt Vierling would get more run. So far, Baddoo came up when Austin Meadows hit the IL, and he's let off 2 straight, and Vierling sat the last game. And this is after Vierling's been playing pretty regularly anyway. One was they played 9 games. He's played 7 of them, and against lefties, he's been leading off exclusively against righties. He's only played 3 of 5, and now with Akil Baddoo up, maybe that 3 of 5 extends more into a weaker side platoon, but he's not in a strict platoon from the looks of things, which is nice. So Matt Vierling, a little bit of power, a little bit of speed, and it's an intriguing overall skill set for Vierling. I'm not in on Baddoo. I'm not doing it. We've seen them pull the trigger on Baddoo very quickly in the past, and Baddoo we know there's a little bit of power, a little bit of speed, but he is leading off. So if you're looking for plate appearances, you're looking for stolen bases, Akil Baddoo can offer that. And if you are listening to the podcast, just be aware that, again, we are live streaming, so you can catch all the visuals behind all this I'm talking about on youtube.com/@GTE Fantasy. Don't forget to check it out and subscribe. For those watching live, subscribe, and you can drop your questions via the YouTube, and I will answer them as we move along, just like we did last episode. So let's move over to from this lineup, which is a mess. And again, if you have any questions about players and stuff, drop them in the chat. But we're going to talk about this individual, Oscar Gonzalez. I'm surprised at the short leash we've seen from him, because Gonzalez wasn't bad against righties last year. However, this year, the reason why it's highlighted and shortened is because, he started 2 of 6 against right-handed pitching. Oscar Gonzalez last year against right-handed pitching, 308, 337, 470 slash. So that's what, 800 OPS roughly against righties with a 129 WRC plus. He actually hit better against righties than lefties last year. That's Oscar Gonzalez I'm talking about. I don't understand the quick leash here. I don't understand why Gonzalez is not getting righties. I know Will Brennan. Trust me, I'm a Will Brennan guy. So the fact that Will Brennan's getting these appearances and ran with them, and he's running with them in comparison, he's not even playing every righty. You can see Will Brennan only played against 4 of 6, but Brennan is getting the starts when Gonzalez is not, and it looks like they might give him a chance to run with it. Brennan is off to a decent start. I think he's hitting close to 300, if not 300, but it's such a small sample. It's very similar to Connor Capel, like I was saying, but Brennan being the better prospect, better bat, good bat to ball skills, not a 0 for power, but it's not a strength, and there's good speed there. So if you're looking for that type of profile, if you're looking for some speed upside, 5th outfielder, if Will Brennan's going to get the strong side of the platoon, he's on a great team, batting 7th on average, which isn't a terrible spot on this lineup. There's intrigue there. There's appeal there. Don't write him off. I would definitely give him a look if you're desperate enough to do so. The next guy we're talking about here is going to be Jhony Brito. And what I find intriguing about him is that So we can look up here. Like he's obviously there's a lot. It's new. Everything here is new. The Savant page, everything is all the information we have is new. But what you'll see here is he utilizes that changeup of his majority of the time. He features a 5-pitch mix, 4 of which Brito throws at least 14.3% of the time. So it's a true 4-pitch mix. I look at it as a 10% usage on a pitch is a true usage of it. It's enough to keep a hitter expecting it. This slider of 3.6% can't really. He only throws it exclusively against lefties as well. So it does give him another option there. But what I want to bring up here is just the potential for more strikeouts. If that curveball with the 40% whiff rate and then having the changeup with a 35.9% whiff rate that he throws the 2 pitches combined about 50% of the time. And I think his O swing was like 37%. Sorry, his O swing to this point is 38.1%. But he does pitch a little bit of contact, has a 56% ground ball percentage. So being able to keep the ball on the ground while creating swing and misses, it's a great combo. There's a good floor potential there. Stuff plus of just 94, but location plus of 105 overall. Like, so he's able to hit his spots. The stuff might not be as good as I'm thinking. If that's a true outlook on it, it's still early, but I think that there is a potential there if he can continue to swing and misses again, inducing the chases he does while able to get ground balls out of his utilization of pitches. Brito is a guy I'm very intrigued by. I think there's a lot of like back end rotation type of upside. I would put him in that range of like, I give him more upside than Braxton Garrett, but that's where my head goes with like Braxton Garrett, Chris Bubich, these guys that are getting kind of run, kind of maybe a Bryce Elder. As long as Brito's up, I think he has that type of potential because he's pitches for the Yankees, good wins upside. He can be a good ratio guy. It's just gonna be strikeouts, and again, that's why Bryce Elder and Braxton Garrett came to mind. I think I could say Garrett Cooper, Braxton Garrett. That's why those guys come to mind because those are guys that I feel like are fair comps. But I think Brito could fit into that type of like solid, safe, like back in rotation type that's just not over the top ceiling wise. Maybe I'm a little pessimistic. Maybe that's even optimistic for him. But I think that's where my head went when I saw this. Other stuff about him, about Brito, real quick. He sits about 95.5 miles per hour on the 4-seam, so there's good velo there to help offset these, the secondaries. He uses the changeup fastball again. Changeup fastball mostly against lefties. Look at the fastball has been exclusively against lefties so far. So it's one of those things where he has pitches versus, and then he throws a sinker versus righties, a curveball versus righties. So he has. It's nice to know that there's a young pitcher like this that has this utilization, but we're likely going to see a lot of the usage flip as we go into starts when he faces heavier righty lineups. So, but Brito having a whiff pitch in the changeup against lefties and a whiff pitch in the curveball against righties, that's promising. It suggests that there is that potential for Brito to sustain like some type of like again that floor. I feel like that there's there. You want the sinker not to be right here. You don't want that sinker located in the middle like this heat zone shows. But other than that, yeah, you can see he kind of hits his spots. He's all around the shadow zone of these zones. Maybe not so much with the slider, but maybe that's why he doesn't throw it too much. But when you look at it, he's like he's living on the edges, which again explains what the ground ball rate really does. When players put contact on it, it's not hard hits. And you can see the 86 percentile hard hit rate tells you just that as well. So although these sliders give you an idea of what to expect, maybe, and that's why you see your X slug up and all that barrel rate. He's allowing hard contact, but it's not quality contact, or it is quality, but it's on the ground. So that you can survive that as long as he keeps that tightrope, and he's known for his control. Sorry to belabor the whole Jhony Brito. I just think it's very intriguing when we get a new player coming up that kind of wasn't expected to be a very solid contributor early on to a team as a whole and has a path to remaining on the team. So Jhony Brito, he's not a must get in like 12s and 10s. He's fringe 12, but 15s he should be rostered if he's not already. Bobby Witt Jr., let's talk about him. People are concerned about him, but there's a lot of reasons not to be. Obviously, home runs and stolen bases are still there, 2-2. But the fact that he's hitting 158 with a 148 BABIP, I was like, all right, cool. So there's bad BABIP luck. Not surprised, but what's causing the bad BABIP? You can't these days. We have so much information. Just looking at saying bad BABIP luck is very lazy analysis, in my opinion. So you have to dig deeper. And obviously, you look right away at the plate discipline metrics. You're seeing that the strikeout rates are right in line with last year, and he's almost doubled his walk rate from 2022 to this point, and it's actually more in line with what you saw in 2021 in the minors, the 9.5% walk rate that Bobby Witt Jr. has at the moment. So you go here, and this is where I found the problem. Ground ball rate's fine. Look at this line drive rate, 6.9% line drive rate. When you compare it to last year at 17.4% and 20% in the minors, 55.2% fly ball rate. So extreme fly ball heavy and 31.3% infield fly ball rate. The highest it's been since AAA in 2021 at 23.9%. So we already know he's kind of prone to those infield fly balls, but we're talking an absurd, like a crazy 31.3%. That's something that should regress to a more normalized, closer to the only issue is last year was like the outlier with the 9.8%. So maybe he is a high infield fly ball guy. And if you guys are curious, that's infield fly ball per fly ball per on Fangraphs. I pulled up you can see the definition if you're watching the live stream. But yeah, so that's concerning. That's where the concern comes in. The BABIP is low, but it's because of that. It's because he's hitting the ball in the air a ton. He's not pulling the ball a lot. So the ball is hitting the air to all parts of the field, mostly center field and deep, center field. Kauffman Stadium isn't going to be very friendly to him. But yeah, it's an extreme fly ball approach, and that's causing the bad BABIP. So saying bad BABIP luck, it is true, but it's also being earned. So you can't sit there and just say Bobby Witt is unlucky completely when part of the unluckiness, if that's even a word, of the profile is his own doing. Will it correct? I believe it will. I wasn't a huge Bobby Witt guy early on. This isn't a victory lap by any means because I still see positives in the profile, but the one glaring negative is something that I feel like he can address and has in the past. But again, we're talking about a guy who has been pretty fly ball heavy in the past. And if he continues getting under the ball the way he is, you're not going to get those hard hits. And you can see the soft contact is way up. The medium contact is kind of in line with last year, but it's really soft contact is up almost 10% on Fangraphs. And the hard hit rate, if we look at the StatCast data, the hard hit rate, I guarantee you, is actually harder than last year. Surprisingly, I thought that'd be down too, but less barrels. That makes sense. His launch angle is way up, but again, it goes back to him getting under everything. So obviously getting under the ball, it's a launch angle is that's another thing about launch angle. Launch angle is a reflection of what the player is doing, not the cause. It's about there's attack angle. I was talking to prospect guys that are way smarter than me about this, but pretty much what it boiled down to, from my understanding of it, is attack angle and launch angle are not the same, and an attack angle is what causes. It's like reaction to it's the fallout is the launch angle. The launch angle is not the true. Like it's not the attack angle. There's a difference, but yes, launch angle is more of a reflection of the fact that he is getting under the ball more. That he's and that makes sense with the fly balls and all that good stuff. So although he's hitting the ball hard, it's not going very far, or it's not and he's not getting those home runs. He's not getting the balls pulled, but the contact rates are fine. Less swing and miss in his profile at this point as well for Bobby Witt Jr. So I'm not concerned. Overall contact going up and all that. There's a lot of positives, just that really big negative I harped on. So that's Bobby Witt Jr. I wouldn't worry for all of you fantasy managers out there that have him. I think there's better days ahead. Hunter Brown changed things up from last start to this one, and that's why I found it interesting. I wanted to bring it up because Hunter Brown was a very popular, sleeper, breakout, whatever you want to call him, preseason, and now he's having himself like he had the whatever start, but maybe it was a slow start. And then this one, you see a huge difference in his pitch utilization from first start to second start. Hunter Brown. First pitch, and second pitch difference. So the four seamer in the first start, 43%. He dropped the usage 14% to 29% in the second start. Curveball, you saw 6% more utilization in the second start. Slider, 12.3% more utilization. And the splitter, he barely threw it in the first start and pretty much stopped throwing it in the second, only 1% usage. And if you look at if we pull up actually all of it, you can see exactly how the second start went. You see just a lot more positives. It was just working for him. I mean, it's just I pulled up the pitch count number here, but what I'm getting at is that he changed things up. What matters here, the big takeaway here is that Hunter Brown changed things up and got results. I like what we saw there. We're going to continue to monitor this because we want to see how this pitch mix falls. Does it settle closer to what we saw last start? Is there a happy middle ground? Did he attack this team a certain way early in the season? Players, pitchers, hitters, they're going to tinker with things and figure out what works for them. So it's going to be interesting to see what works for Hunter Brown, but we saw it work for him his last start. And it's encouraging to see a young player like that adapt from a rough first outing, changes the game plan, and it worked for him. So he's obviously I think he has the type of skill set to continue doing that and working through any kinks that might pop up along the way. Seth Lugo is intriguing, and a lot of it is because of the fact that he was obviously not a starter last year. He hasn't started a game since 2020. Entered the year as a starter. Strikeouts aren't a strength of his, but we're talking about a guy who's inducing early on nearly 70% ground balls, 67.6%, and a strand rate of 94.8%. So obviously he is getting lucky there. The regression monster is probably coming his way, but regression to what? We're talking about a guy who's inducing a ton of ground balls. Seth Lugo's limiting home runs for the most part. Home run per 9 is under 1. And his K- walk rate isn't terrible. It's 16%. So it's not bad. It's just not elite, nothing special. With that said, the ratios, he's 1.38 ERA, but everything suggests he's more of a 3 ERA, a mid-threes ERA pitcher. But again, where you got Seth Lugo, if you're looking at him in shallower formats, if he's available, Seth Lugo, he's good. Like, he's good. He's not great. He's not fantastic, but he's good enough to stick to this rotation. And he's, even again, when the regression monster comes, Lugo will regress to a really solid back end pitcher. Nothing fun, nothing fancy, but that's fine. Not every player is going to be a home run hitter. Mediocrity is okay in deeper formats, and he's a guy that's he's limiting. Yeah, kind of, it's a little bit too much hard contact for my liking, but it's keeping it on the ground is kind of the key there. So as long as this approach works for him, the reason why I even brought him up, though, first what caught my attention with him is that all the velo is down. However, the velo being down for a guy like Lugo makes sense because, again, he's transitioning from reliever to starter. They tend to take velocity off their pitches when they make that transition, or the vice versa. When we saw, like, for instance, Matt Brash, his velocity went way up, skyrocketed to a point where it was like overly impressive as a reliever because they could throw harder because they're going out for shorter periods of time. I do like, but yeah, Lugo's just a guy that he is kind of just a guy in anything other than 15s, but it's a guy that I thought was worth mentioning and bringing up because he is very intriguing in terms of what he's doing. And the slider, that's what I wanted to talk about. His slider usage, his slider had big movement. We're talking what was it? Oh, sorry. His slider had 5.5 less miles per hour, but a huge amount of movement change on it. Let's pull up his Savant page, actually, so we can look it up real quick, because I have it in my notes. I forgot to write down how much of a movement it was, but the reason why it matters is because that pitch is working for him, and that's part of what's working. So the decreased velocity, sometimes it's by design. And again, with him, the reason why I want to bring it up is because his decrease in velocity is by design. The slider usage is at 11.4%. He's not getting a whole bunch of whiffs on it, but it's just a whole lot more different movement patterns. I found it just very intriguing. But he's able to look at the damage. We're talking about a 0 batting average against, a 149 X slug, a 128 X WOBA. So he's not getting whiffs with it, but he's generating a ton of soft contact or no contact at all, which is why it's really, and it's, again, he utilizes it strictly against righties, which is, a lot of what he'll see. So we'll see what happens here. But again, just a safe, solid contributor, nothing fancy, nothing special here. Let's talk about Trent Grisham, another Mariner. Oh, wow, Mariner? What is wrong with me? Another Padre. It's early still, right? I'm going to use that as my excuse. 3 home runs, good walk rate, striking out plenty. The batting average is always an issue, but he's never been a batting average guy. What's weird is, like, okay, cool, the on-base percentage is down even with a double-digit walk rate. I expect that to correct itself. More of like, it's going to matter how he hits, though, because obviously 2020 is what you're chasing. He would need to cut the strikeout rate a little more, and we would see that if once the batting average creeps up a little, we'd see the OBP creep up. It doesn't matter. He has over 800 OPS, 122 WRC plus, an xWOBA of 438 compared to 357. So he's even unlucky while performing. And the big reason why I'm bringing him up is because what you're seeing here is an early change in approach. You have first off, the hard hit rate and barrel rates are skyrocketing, and this matters because the ground ball rate is also way down. Last I checked, yes, 30.8%. He's a career 41% ground ball rate guy. Fly balls are through the roof right now. I wish he would hit a little more line drives because that would help the batting average, but the fly balls are through the roof, and the 59.1% pull rate. He's making a point to sell out for power a little bit. And where he's selling off for power, or where he's being more aggressive. Look at this. The O swing, like 7% up from last year already, and almost 10%, actually like 8.9% up from his overall, like, all-time, his average O swing. And then you have his contact rates remaining while he's being more aggressive. Look at the swing rate. Swing rate career high, 45% right now, about 6% higher than his average. Again, contact rates are about where they were last year, a little less, but again, he's being a little more aggressive. The swing and strike rate is up, but it's the highest it's ever been. And even at its highest, it's still roughly league average. I got rid of the numbers apparently on the thing, but it's still roughly league average. League average being around 11.3, 11.4%. Last I checked, his is about 12.7%. So Trent Grisham, what I'm getting at is that it's just that it's on purpose. And then his first pitch swing rate, if it's still what it was yesterday, or at least close to it, what you had was a 22% last year, his career average is 22% first pitch swing percentage, while it's 28%, 28.6% to be exact, was the number I have written down here. What we're seeing in first pitch swinging. So it's a change in approach. It's leading to the power production we're seeing. He's selling out for power, but just know that first off, he's not going to lead off long term. Tatis returns in 8-9 days, and then on top of that, but he's gonna remain playing is kind of the important part. So maybe he can move himself up the lineup. However, it is what it is. I think that's who he might be. If he's only a 230, 240 hitter, if he's 240, you're lucky. But if he's like a 225, 230 hitter, but he's giving you power and you need power, you could do worse, I guess. I don't know. It's just one of those things where I feel like the floor could just, the rug can just be pulled from under him. All right. And then next, we're stuck holding the bag here. Carlos Carrasco. That's the analysis, right? Look at that four-seam fastball placement. He's all over the place, but a lot of that red is right down the middle. There's part of the issue that changeup staying in the zone more than you probably want to in the middle. The slider, he's at least keeping that towards the depends on which side you're looking at. The one side of the plate, though. Sinker, he's not even hitting the zone with. The curveball, yeah, look at all that red right down the middle as well. You hang them, you bang them. But a lot of the issue is also that decrease in velocity. We're talking 2 miles per hour on the four seam, mile per hour on the changeup, which is fine. Who cares? The secondaries can fluctuate, especially if you have more movement on them. You'll have pitchers throw secondaries purposely softer to get more movement. But the four seam, it's notably different. But again, we're talking about a guy who's coming off a little bit of a dead arm phase at the end of camp or something like I forgot how they termed it. Something that was concerning enough to where it's like, how's that normal for a pitcher? It was something like his arm does this once in a while. It was like an elbow thing or something. So maybe that's lingering. Maybe Carrasco's a slow starter. I don't know. I do know that looking at it, it's like he has more walks than strikeouts right now. The ERA indicators are terrible, but he's been terrible. Sure, the strand rate is due to regress. The home run rate is due to regress, but not if he continues to locate the ball poorly and walk the yard. So Carrasco is he's a tough hold in most formats. Negative 4.8 K-minus walk rate is funny. It's early. I don't mind stashing him, but like in shallower leagues, I don't mind moving on from him. But I just don't. I don't know what's going on here. I think it could. Maybe is it also partly that maybe Francisco Alvarez was calling a poor game yesterday. But yeah, we're talking about bad all around. The O swing is 23.9%. The swing and strike rate is also piss poor at 8.3%. League averages for these, for reference, 11.2% for starting pitchers is the league average swing and strike rate right now. And then the league average chase rate, which is O swing, 31.6%. And as mentioned, Carrasco has a 23.9%. So he's not inducing chases. He's not getting swing and miss. Nothing's going right. It's hard to roster a guy like that right now, especially how bad pitching has been. He is not helping. He is no more than a stash. And even then, in shallower leagues, how are you really going to stash him? It's kind of tough, in my opinion. Anthony DeSclafani is the guy I want to talk about here. Tony Disco. I have a long history of loving this guy. And the 1 year I have, I think, one share in a DC, he's going to have his best year of his career, isn't he? I don't expect him to stay healthy. But early on, we're seeing some fun things going on here. With Anthony DeSclafani, you have the velo being up across the board pretty much, at least it's overall. Yeah, sorry, it's overall. The sinker's up about a mile per hour. I don't care about the changeup. The four-seamer, it was just the sinker. So the sinker was up, is what caught my attention. Last start, a few pitches were up more than usual on the year, but overall in the year, we're talking about the sinker being up about a mile per hour. The curveball being up about 2.5 miles per hour here. And I think it was the movement on this. Yeah, there was movement. A whole bunch of, so we're seeing pitch mix change here too. The movement, there's, let's see. Let me regather myself. So the changeup. So on the sinker, oh man, my notes are all over the place. I really screw these notes up. Let's just do it on the fly. Why don't we? Shall we? So the sinker, I think, was what caught my attention with the movement difference. So the sinker it had about an inch more, about almost less than an inch more of movement. Which one was that? Which one had all the movement change? The slider? Sorry, again, my notes were better than this. This is terrible. So the slider is getting more vertical movement, about 2 inches more vertical movement, while also getting almost a little over half an inch more break of horizontal movement as well. Yeah, there was movement changes going on here. The changeup itself has 1 more inch of horizontal movement and about 1.5 inches more of vertical movement. Again, I apologize for how choppy that came out because my notes were all over the place. But quick note on the pitch mix change, you're getting, what did I do? Oh, so you're getting more sinkers, more changeups, and more sliders here for DeSclafani, which in the process, he's dropping the four seam and curve. The four seam, he dropped 10% of the time, almost 9.4%, and the curve 8.8% less, while really honing in on this slider, sinker, changeup combination. As you can see, he threw 4 pitches at least 13% of the time last year. This year, he has a 3-pitch mix, with the third pitch being the changeup being utilized 16.1% of the time as his third pitch, and the rest of them are 34% and 40% being the sinker and slider, respectively. The changeup usage was the most notably. So that's why all the changes on the changeup caught my attention, is because he upped the changeup usage from 5.8% last year to 16.1%. Again, I apologize. My notes were screwed up, and that was a terrible breakdown for those listening or watching. I apologize that we dragged through that. Michael Kopech bounced back, but was he really any good? Here's the notable changes from start 1 to start 2. He featured a fastball slider usage, essentially dropping the cutter. Essentially dropping the slider usage. Dropping the changeup and curveball usage. I think it was the changeup that was most notably dropped. It was less than 10%, but it was the changeup. Sorry, the changeup. Jeez, you know what? You would think I'd be better at this by now. The changeup was used 16.5% in week 1 compared to less than 10% in week 2. He went so much heavier with the fastball slider combo. Back to his 2-pitch mix. The slider was up 20%, and that's the problem. He's a 2-pitch pitcher, it looks like. Or at least that's what he reverted to when trying to get comfortable. Kopech allows too many home runs right now. Still a ton of fly balls, too many walks. I'm not encouraged by the second start all that much. Even though it was better, I don't think it's gonna last all that long being better. The last guy, not the last guy, a couple more pitchers we're gonna talk about here. Logan Webb, more horizontal movement on the sinker. He got two more inches and then 2.4 inches on the changeup. The changeup has been amazing. We're talking 46.2% whiff rate, which is up 20% from 2022. And so far this year, the changeup has a 62.5% O swing and a 29.9% swinging strike rate early on. Those are, again, it's a great out pitch. The K- walk rate, he up big time for our boy here, Logan Webb. The underlying metrics are in his favor as well, but the K- walk rate is 27.1% for those interested, because I thought I'd mention that because that matters. He's been rather unlucky with the BABIP 366 and a left on base percentage rate of 61%, which is a strand rate basically. But the big issue here is the home runs. The dude is getting crushed by the long ball. We're talking a 30.8 home run to fly ball rate, and I feel like that's going to regress positively in his as the season goes on, as he gets more comfortable. But dude, the changeup's been wild. The movement on his pitches has been great. His strikeout stuff is there. It's just a matter of not missing his spots. Logan Webb, the strikeouts are improving this year. I think what we're seeing from the strikeout rate, or the gains and strikeouts, is going to stick. It's a matter of stopping that long ball from happening. So maybe maybe he pitches the contact a little more as he tries to avoid missing his location and spots. But ultimately, there's a lot to like here from Logan Webb, and I think you should be encouraged. Now, here's a guy that no one's talking about really, Johan Oviedo. Really bad, or it might be Johan. I apologize if I messed up. Really bad first start. Second start, we saw him kind of bounce back, but early pitch mix to note, the curveball is up, I believe. Yeah, the curveball is up about 10%, which is, again, a notable difference. And in response to the curveball being up in terms of usage for Oviedo, he's throwing less four-seamers, less sliders, which again matters because he's throwing about 10% less fastballs while sustaining that slider usage relatively close to last year. He's actually leading with sliders more. So he throws a slider the most, four-seamer the second most, curveball the third most, utilizing those 3 pitches at least 19% of the time early on. And I found that interesting because on the curveball, it's like a tighter pitch. Oh, no, sorry, the slider. The slider is a tighter pitch. That doesn't make sense. The slider is being thrown 3 miles per hour harder on average here. As you can see, 85.7 miles per hour to 88.8 miles per hour. So there's a 3 mile per hour gain in terms of velo, but there's less movement. So it's a tighter pitch. And that's why I'm intrigued, because he's throwing harder. Is it more of like a cutter now? That's where I'm like kind of trying to figure out with Oviedo. But all things considered, it's the Pirates. There's not a whole lot of upside there for wins. But what there is upside there for is just a back end 2-start type, deeper league type. But Oviedo flashed some upside late last year. I know there were some analysts in on him to begin the year. So Oviedo is a guy that I'm finding myself intrigued by in deeper formats, more so as a watch list type, though, not so much as someone I must get type of thing. So just be advised there with Oviedo. So it's the pitch mix, the change in shape of the slider, and the velo change in that slider, which again could be acting more as a mix, like a not quite a cutter, but not as big of a mover as the slider. And then the last guy we're talking about here, because why not? Why wouldn't we end the show with this guy? Victor Robles. Because we can't have a fantasy baseball season or a baseball season in general without Victor Robles being relevant-ish at one point or another. A lot of intrigue early on. Again, we're talking 41 play appearances, very small sample, but he's walking more than he's striking out. 12.2% walk rate to 7.3% strikeout rate. The hard hit rate is up, but not good. 33.3% is one of the better, if not the best of his career to this point. But again, not great. Contact rates are up across the board, but most notably was the 91.1% Z contact, which is contact made inside the zone. I find that very interesting because that is like an elite number. I don't expect it to stick, but he is a former top prospect with pedigree. I don't see why that, like, but again, he does this every year. He goes through these like hot streaks, cold streaks, whatever. He's lacking barrels, and that concerns me. The ground ball rate is 53%. That's not going to play. Less swing and miss and chasing this game. So obviously the contact rates are being earned right now. Just something I thought you should keep your eyes on, because if he does hit on that prospect pedigree by any chance, you'll be in a good spot. But that's going to do it. No questions in the chat. Appreciate those who did watch during the live stream, and those listening, don't forget to leave a rating and review. Don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel, youtube.com/GTE Fantasy. And of course, the Patreon, where we break down all this and more every day, patreon.com/GTE Fantasy. Apologize for a few of those little screw ups of the analysis in the middle. I hope you still gained information from it, but appreciate it. And we'll talk probably in either tomorrow or the next day. So be back soon, and we'll talk soon.